On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what is the biggest concerns for this Thunder team? How concerning could they be? Plus, the ceiling for the Thunder, their best win of the year so far, and previewing an interesting week ahead.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. On today's show, we're joined by Thunder on SI publisher, uncontested podcast co-host, Forbes writer, and media luminary, Nick Crain. Crain,
Man,
how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm realizing I need to get my clothes game up. You're here on the pod in the collared shirt, and I'm just out here in a lowly orange hoodie, looking all casual. I mean,
It's
you're putting me to
casual
shame,
Friday.
man.
It's a casual Friday.
It is a casual Friday.
It's
This is
Bahamas
one of the
shirt.
best days to listen to podcast, in my unbiased opinion, because Friday sets the tone for the weekend.
It does.
And I believe when we pod together on Fridays, it's a good start to the weekend.
It's a great start to the weekend, and this is a very monumental day because this is the first of many Friday pods with Crain, because we have embarked on a deal where Nick Crain will be on Locked On Thunder on Fridays, with the asterisks of when there's a game on Thursday night, a Thunder game on Thursday night, I'll recap that game and we'll shuffle Crain to a different day. But when there's no game on Thursdays, Nick Crain will be on the show on Friday morning for you to set the tone for the weekend. And we're going to get into this more later, but the big segment will be every Friday, Crain Concerns. You're going to submit concerns that you have about the NBA or the Thunder or life in general. I mean, it could be some girl troubles. Crain's a ladies' man.
Oh, man.
He can help you out, and we will help you correct them and let you know how concerning are they really. We have a batch for today. You can submit those on the YouTube comments. You can submit those on Twitter by tagging us at Crain NBA for Nick, at Rylan_Stiles for me, with the hashtag Crain Concerns, and then we'll get to it on the next show. But this is going to be a very fun partnership and walk forward on Locked On Thunder. But Nick, let's start with your view of the Thunder season. A little bit over a quarter of a way through the season now. We've gotten some data points. We also have not gotten some very important data points yet due to injury. Yeah. But what have you made about the fact that the Thunder lost Chet Holmgren 10 games into the year, and yet here they sit at 30-6?
Yeah, if I said anything besides surprising, I'd be lying to you. I think even if Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein were healthy for all 36 games to this point in the season, I'd probably still be pretty surprised at their record. Should I be? Probably not. But every year for the past couple years, I keep saying the Thunder made a jump. There's no way they make another jump that significant. And after nearly winning 60 games last year, it looks like they've made another jump. Now, there's a lot of season left. They likely won't win at this rate, but it has been nothing short of surprising. So that's my first overall thought. I'd say the defense has been historic, and I think that was not a surprise. I think if you looked at the advanced numbers, if you looked at the leading indicators of what make a great defense, this Thunder team had every component entering the season. And even with the injuries, they've still been historic, and I don't think that's all that surprising. I'll say the offensive drop-off has been a big theme. There's a handful of things about the offense that leave room for optimism. And obviously they've won a ton of games without being at their best offensively. But maybe that's the scariest thing about this Thunder team is they're 30-6 coming off a franchise high 15-game win streak. And their offense hasn't been great on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, the scary thing is, that there is still another level that they can get to. Now, we can talk about both sides of that coin of if they will get there and what could stop them from getting there, especially this year. I think that there is some things this year that might be a bit of a long-term concern, which we're going to get to. But you mentioned it whenever Chet goes down with that injury, and he was playing at that. He played till November 10th, and in that 3-week span, like for 2 of those weeks, he was playing with MVP numbers, and then he dropped down to only all-star numbers, and then he got hurt. Like whenever he went down, there was a large pocket of people around the NBA, locally, nationally, who thought, well, if the Thunder can just survive and get home court advantage, this will be a huge success in the regular season. They've not only survived, but they've grown a cushion for the number one overall seed, and they are in a position right now with the way that they respond to losses and don't let those losses pile up. They're in position to, when Chet is back, you're really not concerned about like your seeding. You're concerned about integrating him and getting him back on the court and healthy. So that's a huge benefit from this early part of the season, is seeing that the Warriors went through their struggles. Obviously, the Mavericks are losing games due to injury now, but like these other teams, Memphis due to injuries, these other teams who were right there and it felt like they could wrestle away control or at least keep it competitive, they've all kind of drifted to where now the competition's 2 through whatever instead of at 1.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, if you had told me on January 9th, even if all teams were fully healthy, that Oklahoma City would have, I think it's a 5.5 game lead over second. And the second was the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
This is a funky season. I think the interesting kind of shift or pivot that's been, I'm sure, comforting for the Thunder front office and for Chet Holmgren himself is that you're totally right. When he went down, it was like, can they stay afloat? Now it's almost like, should they be a little cautious and like give him more time to come back? Like really at this point, obviously assuming Hartenstein stays healthy, most notably, and the other core pieces do as well, I'd argue you don't need Chet Holmgren back for any longer amount of time than just enough time for him to integrate, get back into game shape, and figure out how the Hartenstein-Holmgren kind of pairing is going to work. Other than that, like, there's no rush, which is a luxury to have for a team like the Thunder.
Yeah, and you for sure want to be extra cautious with Chet with this injury because, you know, I hope that Chet is going to be fine and he's going to return, and I fully believe he will play basketball this year. Like the Thunder organization is among the most calculated in all of sports, much less the NBA. They're among the most private in all of sports, much less the NBA. And for them to put on paper that they expect Chet to return this year, instead of leaving it ambiguous or saying, you know, we'll update you later on, they said, no, he's going to play this year. Then we'll tell you how that process is going later. That, to me, was the biggest sign that he's going to get on the floor. With that being said, I would caution some people that, like, it's not 2K where, like, they give you a pop-up alert that, hey, Chet's hurt. He'll be back in 6 weeks. And then once that 6 weeks comes, he's back, and he's back to the overall rating he was prior to the injury. This is a massive deal, this hip injury. There are some studies done that suggest that of all the injuries you can have, this one should not hamper your level of play. But that's not really a guarantee to me. So I would say that, they're going to need to get him on the floor as quickly but as safely as possible, just to see how he can get back to game shape, because he might not ever get to the peak of what the season could have been this year, and you might have to wait till next year. But if he can just give you something this year and give you some kind of enough, you have the makings of a really quality roster. So it's just an interesting aspect of, like, I don't know how anyone can expect him to hit the ground running whenever he returns. But if he does, then all of a sudden you're talking about a historic team.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not 2K. If it was, I'd beat you per usual, but it's not. And
no, that's not true.
The reality is, like, this is the window in which we're supposed to get some sort of update. Like you said, hamper expectations. An update could be, we'll give you another update in a month. He's progressing as expected. Like, that could be the update. I think that there's a hidden advantage to this. Like, you never want one of your star players to go down with a significant injury. But this provides an opportunity for others to develop and get more minutes, not just centers on the roster, but other players are getting more minutes because of the residual effects of this injury. Mm-hmm. And frankly, one of the only things you could pick at for Chet last season was he looked tired at the end of it. And in the playoffs, there was times it was like, man, does he have the legs to make 3-pointers? He will presumably be pretty dang fresh going into the playoffs. That'll be right around the time that he's like back in game shape, but he's not going to be beat. Meanwhile, these other guys are developing. Like, we could look back if the Thunder make a deep postseason run or even win the whole dang thing, and they could with this roster. We could look back and you and I could be talking on a championship Friday and saying, man, that Chet injury like was kind of a blessing.
Man, what a time that would be if we're having a championship Friday. That would be an all-time show. But to your point, we don't know like when, if the update's coming. Technically speaking, like I'd have to ask. I mean, I will ask. Mark did say 2 days, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, that Chet is progressing as expected. And then Chet went on this road trip, and Joel Lorenzi saw him doing some stuff after shoot around on the court, which is the first time we've ever seen Chet on the court. Even just simply moving with the ball and moving with coaches. So maybe that's the update, and they just didn't do it in an email form, but perhaps we still get an email, which I imagine the email will echo what Mark says. Kind of just a vague, hey, he's where we expect. And then here's another timeline to kind of look forward to for another update. I wouldn't expect that to be much. Me personally, like I know that people like are chomping at the bit for Chet. I don't really I wouldn't expect him back until the month of March at some point. And if he gets back quicker than that, then like that's cool. But I just am thinking March.
I post All-Star break has been my kind of line of thinking. That obviously could be March, second half of February, early March. I don't think they would hold him out longer intentionally out of caution, because I do think it's equally as important to get your legs under you. Like a leg injury, he's gonna have some conditioning when he gets back, and it's if he's on a minutes restriction, it could not be because they're worried about re-injuring. It could be because the dude just needs like NBA games are tough, man. It's not just as simple as running around.
I mean, he literally couldn't walk. I mean, so like you go from not walking to and you think about it and it feels so long on your mind, but when you really look at the actual calendar that we all follow, now to the All-Star break is not that far away.
No,
if he's just now stepping on the court after not being able to walk, to in the sense of trying to get NBA ready. And so I think that you could see some of those precautions. That's not an indictment on like what he can handle or load management or anything else, other than, dude, it's tough to get back on the horse in game shape after you have had an injury that truly left you, bedridden, not just kind of hurt in general, not just like a finger injury, which Usman Jang had. Like you could still do a lot of stuff to keep yourself in game shape. He can't do anything to keep himself in game shape whenever you're cast to the bed. But Nick Crain coming up. We're going to talk about the first edition of Crain Concerns. How concerned should you be about some of these Thunder trends? But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Game Time, go check them out today, because I love going to live events, whether it's sports, movies, theater, comedy shows. My favorite memories as a kid was attending AAA baseball in Oklahoma City with my dad, and that was all thanks to getting tickets to those games. And so you can go to Game Time, get tickets with the energy and the excitement to make unforgettable memories at these live events. And Game Time has made it even easier for you to get tickets to your favorite events with their new features, such as Game Time Picks. The feature filters out all the fluff. It only shows you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through tiny 1,000 dots on the map looking for the right tickets for you. Game Time gives them to you. And my personal favorite feature is whenever you toggle all-in pricing on. It shows you the exact unbeatable prices all up front. No surprise fees at checkout, what exactly you're going to pay when you go to checkout whenever you toggle on all-in pricing. It is a luxury. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase whenever you download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. We're here with our first batch of Crain Concerns. So I did tease this a little bit this week on the pod. So a lot of you left YouTube comments, and I grabbed some of those for this first edition. But again, moving forward, you can tweet them. You can put them on YouTube. You can even email LOThunderpod at gmail.com if you want to. And then we'll give you the credit for that. We'll talk about your concern, and we'll tell you how concerned you should be. So let's start with the first concern. Jalen Williams' offense, Nick. If you look at his basketball reference page, everything's gone up, technically. But if you look at the eye test, there's been some laborious times on the offensive end. How concerned are you about his ability to be a number 2 scorer in year 3?
Not very in the regular season. I think there's situational concern. Not that it's not something that can't be ironed out, whether that's this season or next or in the future. There seems to be some sort of recipe to slow him down. Like he's the type of scorer that on any given night could have a phenomenal night. When you think about some of the teams, like I think the lazy or surface level take that you see on social media is he can't do it in big games.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that.
No.
I don't think it's like a mental thing. I just think that the big games are against
He can't do
good
it against big teams.
And the teams that he has struggles against are big wing defenders. You think the Mavericks in the playoffs last year, the PJ Washingtons, the Derek Jones Juniors of the world. You think about teams like the Pelicans, who he actually was pretty good against, like the Herb Jones, the Trey Murphys. Like those are the archetype of defenders that I think have more success with him. I wouldn't say like shut him down. And then also like the rim protection element too. A big piece of Jalen Williams' game. The mid-range is obviously a big piece of it. And then finishing at the rim. And the rim finishing was what made him like unique early in his career. And this season it's been a bit down. There's an element of that. There's an element of that that's I think he's not getting a whistle at the rim. And I think he's been pretty vocal about that too. I think a lot of it's just the way he plays is just so aggressive and powerful. And those kind of guys don't often get the foul calls. I think it's also the fact that being a number 2 and the respect that he's gained around the league, he is being game planned for. There's no question that he's being game planned for. And the best of the best scorers in the league go through these ruts where all of a sudden there's schemes and coverages and things being thrown at you. Shea went through this. Like there were years that we were like, can Shea be this alpha guy? He is. But it takes time to adjust to that. And I think that it's not a concern with Jalen Williams. Like he will be good enough to be a number 2 on a championship team. There's no doubt. But yeah, he has struggled some in situations this season and last season in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I think that there is some concern. I think it is overblown. I think that it's as simple as he's struggling to get downhill against physical wings. And whenever you couple that with a high-level rim protector, then you've really compounded the problem for him. I think that there's also, like, the reason why the concern level is so low is because there's easy fixes to these quote-unquote problems. Because you look at his mid-range shot, you know, he's down a little bit, 49% to 45%. The three-point shot, a little bit concerning, the dip from 43% to 35%. But the big concern is at the rim. His first 2 seasons in the league, he shot 70% at the rim in both seasons. Kind of weird, but he shot exactly,
which is
70
obnoxious, by the way.
Yeah, it's absurd. I mean, for a point of reference, 80th percentile in the league at the rim the last 2 seasons. This season, he's shooting 66%, which is in the 40th percentile in the league. And to go along with that, he's also getting to the rim less. Like his drive frequency is down 3% this year. Getting shots at the rim, that's a little bit of a concern. But the reason why I'm not like hit the panic button concerned, if we're going to give you the Crain chain links, I'd only give you 1 on the concern meter because is 1, teams are game planning for him. As Mark always says, progression's not linear. He's only in year 3. Okay, moving that all aside, because at some point, like you just have to evaluate the game and not the kind of other stuff. Hartenstein is a weird pairing with him because you think about, it's easy to say like use Chet as a band-aid, like, oh, when Chet's back. This is one tangible thing that I think really hurts J-Dub not having Chet and why he's so much better when Chet is there. When Chet and J-Dub are running a pick and roll and running the 2-man game, where does Chet go? I mean, Chet goes to the 3-point line, which either you follow Chet to the 3-point line and that frees up the mid-range at the elbow, it frees up getting to the rim, or you leave Chet by himself at the 3-point line, which frees up a simple read for J-Dub where he just gets it, kicks it to Chet, Chet hits a 3, now you have to adjust to it anyway, and you're right back to having to send a guy to Chet at the 3-point line and get more guys in the mid-range. When Isaiah Hartenstein sets a screen, albeit he's a better screener, that advantage, though, is kind of lost whenever he has to set a screen and go to the elbow, which if you close your eyes and think back to the biggest shots, the biggest moments from J-Dub his first 2 years, they were all jump shots at the elbow, all jump shots in the mid-range, and going toward the rim. And Hartenstein's man just kind of lingers there because they know where Hartenstein is going to go after the screen, and that does make life harder on J-Dub. He does have to adjust to it. He still has to get better, but it is a different element for him in year 3.
Look, and everything changes if this Thunder team can even sniff the efficiency from beyond the arc that they were as a team last year. There's a lot of teams this year. I mean, they're Thunder 19th or 20th in the league in 3-point shooting. There's some teams that just say, we're gonna pack the paint a little more than like they're not like Josh Giddey packing the paint, but they're packing the paint a bit more, and it's more crowded in there. Straight up, if this team starts making more perimeter shots, his life gets easier too.
So I'm at a 1 for J-Dub's concerns because we've seen him attack the rim harder than this. We've seen him hit shots in the mid-range more efficiently than this. We've seen him make threes more efficiently than this, and we also see a strategic, disadvantage that he's having to deal with, all while still, if you just look at the raw numbers, technically improving, except for efficiency this season. But that's just a 1 on the concern meter. What about Isaiah Joe's 3-point shooting? He's been a slow starter before, never quite this slow. Like, where are you at on a guy like Isaiah Joe and kind of encompassing the rest of this 3-point shooting for the whole roster?
Yeah. And on the last one with Jalen Williams, I'll give you a 2. It's a big enough sample that I'm going to go a little higher than 1, but it's not a concern. Isaiah Joe, I'm going to give you a 4, but it's a more complex 4 than would meet the eye. I'm going to give it a 4 and not higher because we have probably close to an 800 3-point shot sample set of Isaiah Joe in Oklahoma City, shooting above 40% in both of the last 2 seasons. He's a proven shooter. There's no doubt about it. On the flip side of that, the reason it's higher than just saying, oh, it's a 1 or 2, because we know we can get back to it, he's a proven shooter, is just the pressure of this season, in the sense that, like, you could say, and I think we both would believe, this Thunder team is going to be very good for the next half decade, if not longer, and have a chance to, injuries, aside, fight for a championship every single season. But these next 2 years are big ones, where, like, the J-Dub extension, the Chet extension, neither of those have kicked in. You have some roster flexibility. This is one of those 2 years where, like, you kind of need some of the complementary pieces to click if you're going to make it as far as you'd like to. And Isaiah Joe's not right now, and it does have downstream effects on other players like Jalen Williams. So it's not a concern in the sense that I don't think he'll turn it around, because I think he will. But in the slight chance he doesn't, like, that changes the calculus of the way this team plays. And, like, in the past 2 seasons, SGA's numbers on the court with Isaiah Joe have been bonkers, and his lineup numbers with everybody this season are bonkers. But at some point, like, that's a big factor for this team.
Yeah, it's a massive factor. I would also say a 4 if you, like, include everybody shooting, because it's not just Isaiah Joe. I mean, Cason Wallace is way down. Caruso is way down. My only, saving grace, I would say, would be, we've seen these guys shoot well before. And even if you don't want to buy into Cason, for example, I don't think he's a 40% 3-point shooter the way he was last year. But I also don't think he's a 20-something percent 3-point shooter. Like, and if you don't want to buy into Caruso's 40% last year, for his career, he's still a 37% 3-point shooter, which I think is gonna be where he levels off at, not a 20-something percent 3-point shooter. And, like, those things turning would be big for the Thunder. But again, as much as Isaiah Joe's been a slow starter before, he's never been this slow at starting from 3. And it does kind of compound itself of, like, like it or not, or founded in truth or not, the trade deadline rumors are swirling. This is a great team. You can't, this is your job. Like, your job is to go be the 3-point shooter. You're not doing your job, frankly. Like, you're not making threes at a high enough clip to be the team shooter. And all of that can weigh on you. Now, I will say, like Isaiah Joe, at practice on the day before the road game, the day before they left. So I guess it was Monday, whenever they left on Tuesday. On Monday, he talked about how he's got to just keep shooting, and he's got to just keep getting shots up and just trust that they're going to go in, and keep working, watching the film. And he did point out that, one of the key differences is he's still trying to adjust to playing off Hartenstein, because Hartenstein gives you more DHO threes than you're used to. And you're used to just being this guy who's only taking catch and shoot threes in the corner from a Shea drive or a J-Dub drive. Now they just look a lot different, feel a lot different. That being said, eventually you've got to start making them, and it's got to be released sooner than later. But coming up, we'll have our last Crain concern of the week and preview the week ahead and talk some draft. But first, I want to say right now about the Ultimate GM. Go check them out today, because I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about, Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes in Ultimate College Basketball HC. You control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staffs to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hand. And then when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays, set your strategy, and the way you want to play won't just affect your current season, but it also shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Here's a very special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all uppercase, all caps, inside the game store to get a free bonus for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. It's great to download the Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com to look it up, or just go to the App Store and look it up. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Nick Crain. We're back talking Thunder Hoops on Locked On Thunder with Nick Crain at Crain NBA, Uncontested Podcast, Thunder NSI, and a media luminary doing everything in the world you could ever think of doing, and traveling to Dubai and places of that nature. But Crain, let's talk about the NBA draft real quick, because you also are the publisher about the with the NBA draft. Give me 3 quick names / bullet points of if you're going to settle in and watch some college hoops this weekend, who should you be keeping an eye out for the Thunder?
You said college. Do you really want 3 college? You want 3 in general?
You can do 3 in general, but that was the kind of the bridge, if you will.
Yeah. We'll give you 2 college and 1 international. Okay. College wise, it's not the Thunder archetype, but I think it's an archetype they need to consider in the draft, and that's Trey Johnson out of Texas, a jumbo wing that can just fill it up. He's young, but at the college level, he has been a proven scorer, and that is super impressive. Another is Canipple out of Duke, another guy that I don't think will have the most draft buzz in terms of like social media hype, because his highlights are not like crazy dunking on people doing wild stuff, but he is very fundamentally sound. He does a lot of things that impact winning. He does seem like a Presti guy. He plays for Duke. I think he would be an interesting player. On the international circuits, let's go Ben Saraf. Every season, it seems like we say the Thunder already have so many point guards who can make things happen and operate the pick and roll and do all these things. He's a jumbo kind of combo guard. Plays for the team that Isaiah Hartenstein just invested in. He's a partial owner now. Just saying. He's an interesting player.
Tampering, some would say.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? But he's a fun player that I think will be a riser as the season goes on.
So we're going to do much more draft stuff throughout the calendar year with this new partnership of Nicky Crain Fridays. But Nick, this has been a great first edition. We did our Crain concerns. We have a mega Crain concern to lead off the next edition, which will be the trade deadline. That's all I'm going to say. So if you want to hop in with trade deadline candidates, drop them down below. And any other concern you have about the NBA or about the Thunder, we will react to them next week. But Nick, this week, to close out the show, the Thunder have really an interesting schedule, because you're still in the midst of this stretch where you're playing contender after contender, New York again tonight in Madison Square Garden. But then you get a sigh of relief a little bit whenever you head to Washington and then head to Philadelphia, which is always going to be dependent on the injury report for the 76ers. And then Cleveland again, Dallas on the second night of a back-to-back. what would the Thunder have to do in your eyes to where you look at New York, Washington, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Dallas? Their record after that has to be what to be considered a good week?
I think 3-1. I think that it'll be the week of revenge. I think the Knicks will get their revenge at home, Madison Square Garden. I think the Thunder will get their revenge at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if you split those games, even if it's the flip side of that, I think you got to beat the Sixers and the Wizards. Sixers are a tricky one. They're in theory better than their record. Wizards would be kind of inexcusable, but I think that 3-1 should be expected.
Yeah, I could see that. I would say like it would depend on how the three how the 2-2 would look of if you dropped Cleveland and New York. Those are the only two you should ever drop. Even if the Sixers are healthy, you got to beat the Sixers on the road. But if you were to drop both of New York and Cleveland, did you lose against Cleveland just because you simply had no answers inside and there's kind of nothing you can adjust to in that fact? Or did you lose in Cleveland because once again they went to a zone that just threw you off kilter to the nth degree, which we wrote about for Thunder on SI? Did you lose to Cleveland in a way that was controllable? Because some of the inside stuff is out of your control at this very moment with how the roster is constructed health-wise. And then it's tough to play on the road in New York, even though guys typically get up for it. So like it wouldn't surprise me either way if like Jalen Williams tonight has his best game of the season because he's playing in Madison Square Garden. If it can work for Trey and Josh Giddey, it can work for Jalen Williams in the Garden. But Nick, this was a lot of fun. Let them know what you're cooking up on all your various places, and we'll be back again next week.
Crain NBA on Twitter is where I put all my stuff. We're at a point in the draft cycle. Rylan just asked me about a few guys that a lot of the profiles are big time sleepers. So if you want to be a draft junkie and read about some guys that you may never heard of, we've got a lot of that going on at Draft Digest, and then per usual, bunch of great Thunder content. Thunder on SI. Rylan's our top guy over there, putting out amazing stuff. So I defer to Rylan on if you want some really good content that's written, he's your guy.
I appreciate that. Go check out Thunder on SI. And until next time, be good and be good to one another.